Okay, everybody, I'd like to welcome you to another webinar from the City of Oak Hill. Today we're talking about our Dilapidated Structures program. My name is Marvin Davis. I am the GIS coordinator for the City of Oak Hill. And we are doing this through Zoom webinar. If you are unfamiliar with Zoom webinar, there is an option for Q&A. So if anytime during this presentation you have a question, feel free to submit a question through the Q&A portal, and we'll take some time at the end to answer any questions that you may have. And also, if you have any additional questions at the end, I will give out my email address to anybody who's interested in asking further questions or comments to me. I can answer them through email as well. So be sure to understand I'm willing to help any and everybody get the gist of this program, and also feel free to ask questions about anything else that we're doing here at the City of Oak Hill. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into our presentation, and this will take very short time compared to our demonstration. Just talk about the Dilapidated Structures program. The first things is the goals that we set, and getting into the priority scoring system, talking about some of the successes that we've seen so far through what I've called, quote unquote, our first run of the program. And then the bulk of this webinar will be dealing with Survey123 and Operations Dashboard that we use for as part of this program. And the next part of it will be Daniel Peters from Esri, who will take a few minutes to talk to you about some of the software requirements of this, and to talk about Esri's role in all of our local government operations. And then at the end, I will once again say I'll take some question and answers if anybody has any. So just to talk about some of the program goals, the first thing that was established was we need to develop a comprehensive inventory of blighted and dilapidated structures in the city. And we had nothing really to go on. We had pretty much, if somebody would call in, you would end up with, okay, here is a house on this street next to me. It's falling apart. Can you do something about it? And that's very inefficient when you're talking about a city of several thousand structures. It's impossible to catch them all by waiting for somebody to report them. And the idea through this was that we would collect a comprehensive inventory through a field survey. And using that field survey, we would use a priority score based on 7 or 8 criteria. And that priority score would be based out of 100 total points. So the higher the score, we would be able to identify the severity of structures or the more likely candidates for demolition. And so we would use that data from the field surveys. And the other thing that we would do is we implemented an operations dashboard. So what we'd be able to do is have a very intuitive display of all of the data being collected from these surveys, and you would be able to visualize the worst offenders, is what we've called them. I've also called them the low-hanging fruit. The higher scores, the more severe issues, the more emergency issues, we could deal with those, or we could break it down any number of ways, and I'll show that momentarily. And so I'm just going to briefly cover this. I don't want to go into the details. If you really want to know the details, I'll save some time at the end to better explain this. The criteria we came up with was 8 criteria, 100 points total, and we broke it down, as you see, different points for different things. But just to explain what those criteria are, when we're saying responsible party identifiable, that means that we either have a good idea that we can get the responsible owner of this property, or if it's been abandoned maybe 5-6 years and we're pretty sure it's going up for tax sales, or it's in the middle of a tax sale and we're not sure who owns it right now because it's in what we call limbo between the previous owner and the new owner. It can vary up to 10 points. The estimated floor area, that is based on what I call a very objective view of it. So we're not walking up to a building and saying this building is 3,246 square feet. We're looking at the building based on, is it 0 to 3,000 square feet or 3,000 to 10,000 square feet or so on and so forth. I'll show that momentarily, but we base that on that because the bigger the building, the more costly for the city is going to be to knock it down. The construction type also factors into that cost. And so we factor it in if it's a stick build house, a traditional 2x4 stick build, is it steel frame, is it masonry? So we have several options there that we can meet that criteria up to 10 points. The property zone is broken down into, is it commercial, residential, or industrial? And we score based on that. The structure condition, this is what many view as a subjective clause, I think, or a subjective criteria. But we try to make it as objective as possible. And what we did was we would list certain things that have to be existing at that property for us to market a certain level of severity. So if somebody's windows are broken in the house or if somebody's kicked the front door in, that's different than, okay, the walls are listing, part of the roof's already caved in. There are clearly moments from this house falling over if we step onto the property. And that kind of ties into the next stage, which is emergency or imminent hazard. And you notice that's a large criteria. That makes up a quarter of the total points available. The emergency imminent hazard means that if there is very much a safety hazard at that property, by which if I walk in there, am I going to fall through the floor? Is the roof going to cave in on me? Is this open to the elements? Is this open for people either homeless or children that could get into the house and get themselves injured or possibly killed? It's basically a yes/no question. So if I view certain things at that property, make it an imminent hazard, it's 25 points. The proximity to other dilapidated structures, and this one is interesting for us because we wanted to view it based on, are there other dilapidated structures near this property? Because if there are, maybe it would do better for the city to knock them all down in one fell swoop compared to, is this an isolated structure off to itself? It's not harming anybody, but it's still dilapidated. But we're going to be only knocking down one structure at that time. The view shed of the property also deals with basically how visible it is. Does it affect the aesthetic of the neighborhood? Can I see it from a main road? Can I see it from an arterial highway? Can I see it from a neighboring property? And usually that just means standing in front of the structure that you're surveying, looking left, looking right, looking behind you. Are there structures visible? Can they see you? And can you see the structure from a main road, a main thoroughfare? And if so, it's basically 3 different criteria for that. Yes, 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 no, 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 and the points are based on that. And so once this gets tallied up, what this causes is a higher score for very dangerous structures and what I called before low-hanging fruit, which are the smaller wood frame structures that are easy to go through demolition, easy to dispose of, and luckily less costly in our minds to do all of that. And so it makes it easier for us to just take care of the issue much more than if we're having to knock down a storefront, if we're having to knock down a older, more sturdy structure like a masonry building or a steel built structure. So just getting into the first run of the program, this is very much in its infancy, but the one thing that we've focused on is getting structures surveyed, and as you can see on the second point, we've surveyed 28 total structures. And then in this past January, we had the first Oak Hill Structural Inspection Board meeting that utilized this program. And the operations dashboard, and I'll show this more in a minute, has filtering capabilities that would allow us to filter out structures that didn't meet a certain criteria. And in this case, we used 80 to 100 in the total priority score. And what this did is this fleshed out 11 structures to be demolished. And what happened was the Structural Inspection Board viewed that map, they viewed that in operations dashboard, and they took all 11 structures out of that dashboard and recommended all 11 be demolished, which is a recommendation they send to City Council. So City Council takes up the recommendation, and I'm speaking a little bit of the process here. That recommendation gets taken up. You basically consider the factors on each one. Is the owner present? Did the owner actually come to the meeting and talk to us about it? Is it going to be a costly demolition? What's the time frame that we're looking at to get this demolished? Things of that nature. And one thing that we're getting out of it is the City Council took up all 11. They tabled 4 because the owners showed up and the owners asked for more time. The other 7 structures were ordered to be demolished, which in this process means once they get ordered to be demolished, the order is served by a local sheriff, either Fayette County or whichever county the property owner lives. That notice gets served and the order gets served to the owner. They have 20 days from the service of that order to begin demolition. And that means going through the process of getting a demolition permit, getting asbestos inspection as ordered by the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection. They need to actually begin physical work on demolishing the structure within 20 days. Without doing that order, that would allow the owners more time to demolish, and given the winter conditions and everything, it might not be suitable to do so. But it gets kind of a political process is what has appeared to be. And the idea is that this data that was presented to council helped make that decision because they understood the severity of each structure based on their priority score. And so the next stage I'm going to get into is the actual demonstration here. So let me back out here. And the first thing I want to show you is Survey123. And I know I just opened up Microsoft Excel. For those who are unaware of Survey123, this is one of the ways of being able to develop one of these forms. And Survey123 is very intuitive in terms of the end user. So if I'm wanting to make a quick form that just has a map on it, I just mark a point on a map and I want to answer 10 questions about that particular property or that particular location, I can easily put it into Excel here. I can ask what the question is and everything else, and I put it in to Survey123 Connect, which is this software here. So if you notice, everything on my left screen here, or left side of the screen here, is feeding into this form right here that you're seeing, which is the survey that we use to determine the priority score of a structure. So you notice it's a little bit technical. It's not quite straightforward in how to explain this. It does involve a little bit of what I will say is coding. It's not really writing like JavaScript or Python, but it is similar to coding in the way that you have to structure your data, you have to structure this form, and you have to establish how each one of those attribute fields that this is creating, how they interact with one another. And so I'm going to focus on the questions down here. So the questions I highlighted just now, those are the criteria of that priority scale that I showed earlier. So in those options, they have to select one of these questions that you see right here. So that's these questions. And you notice some numbers next to each one of the criteria. If I select one, the thing it does is it goes down here to the bottom in that total score, and it starts to tabulate it. So I'm going to do this backwards, obviously, just to show you a few points here. So you see I selected high visibility for view shed of property, and then you can see the criteria that it can be seen from neighboring properties and arterial roadways. Go to proximity to other dilapidated structures. Is it isolated, or is it close to one or more structures? I'm going to say it's close to one or more structures. And you see this form is automatically tabulating the scores as I'm going along, so I can say it's an imminent hazard. Already it's tabulated up those 3 questions. And how that operates is this total score field that's right below those questions. And all it's doing is this very jumbled mess right here, which is it's saying add every one of these answers up as they're selected. So that's as far as I'm going in terms of technical discussion on this. I don't want to bore everybody with how this form operates, but one thing I wanted to definitely point out is how dynamic these forms can be. So it might not have to do with a dilapidated structure. It could just be something completely off the wall, but you need to tabulate scores, and it can do that as well. And the other thing I wanted to point out too is you see these criteria that we've selected. That's not authoritative. That is what we've selected by sitting down and brainstorming and coming up with this scoring system. By all means, if you think there's another criteria that we're not considering, that you think if I wanted to develop this form, I would want to include this, you're free to do so. I'm not suggesting anything other than this is how we have gotten to this point. So big deal. I've made a form. I'm submitting a point. What's the next step? And this is the actual active form that I just showed you. And this is how it looks online. We use it on our mobile devices, either our tablets or our phones. And you can see it looks the exact same way. It operates the exact same way. And it even gives us a signature field, which works a lot better on a touch screen instead of a point and click interface. So what happens once I complete this survey? What's the big deal? And the big deal is it goes into our operations dashboard. So this is right now an inventory of all of our our structures that we have surveyed. It's incomplete. We are still actively working on it. We've been adding structures almost daily. I want to say more weekly, but we've had a few weeks where we've been doing them each day. And you notice we have several different factors down here, several different ways of illustrating this data. And you notice I have a breakdown of total scores. And you notice we have 6 90s. I can hover over this. I got 6 85s. I got 2 80s. And that's cool, but here's the other thing. This is a dynamic graph. So if I wanted to only select the 85s, I click that, and it automatically changes everything on the screen. I have all the property lists right here, so I can select any one of those. It shows it on the map, so I'm only showing the 6 structures that scored an 85. Imminent safety hazards, I see that all 6 are imminent safety hazards. The average priority score is obviously 85. And right now it's saying I have 1 structure to be reviewed by council. So that means it's one that's been put in the survey. It has not started the process of being considered by the structural inspection board or recommended to council. If I go to the under review tab, I notice, okay, now I have 4 structures that are currently under review by council. That's supposed to say under review. So I just noticed a glitch there. And if there are any demolished by the city, which obviously none of them have been yet, that number would show here. And I can add I can add even more counters into this if I wanted to. Like if I wanted to talk about ones that are demolished by the owners, that might show 2. If I wanted to talk about ones that have been ordered to be demolished, so on and so forth, that I can break it down even more if I wanted to. So I'm going to turn that off now and let it. There we go. So I'm just going to zoom down here to one of these structures here. And they disappeared. There we go. Something kludgy is going on there. Okay. Disregard the technology having a mind of its own there. So when we're talking about the structural inspection board meeting, the first thing they did was, okay, there are several structures in this data that really they should be surveyed, they should be addressed, but they're very low on the totem pole of being addressed. They're not really severely dilapidated compared to others. So let's break out the ones that are the worst offenders. And the first thing our city manager did was change the priority score to 80, the low end score to 80, and leave the high score 100. And it derived out 11, and I'm thinking that's more than 11 now, structures that are considered now. And the other thing that wasn't done at the time, because these were still not yet reviewed, I can also change the status of the structure. So I can look at only ones that are review in progress, and these are the 11 that we're currently addressing. And the other thing about the map is I can open up the pop-up. I can look down through the information. So I have the owner information. I have the criteria that was selected. I have the total score down here. I have the full name of the person who did the survey, which is our city manager, and the structure status, which is review in progress. And as you can see over there, that's why I enabled that. So you notice I turned that off and I have a structure up here. So let me see what's going on here. And I see owner information again. I see the criteria. I see that it scored a total 85. Additional comments, I have spoken with the owner. The structure was demolished by owner, and therefore the status was changed. So that's why it didn't get considered, because it had been demolished. And then we have another, I think this one. And if I scroll down here to the bottom, the status has not been established yet because it has not been reviewed. And the great thing about I'm going to turn that down so everything updates again. The great thing about an operations dashboard is how dynamic it can be. You notice there's a lot of different ways to interpret this data. You can see it on the map. You can see every point on the map. You can filter out ones you're not wanting to look at. Everything changes. The list will change based on the filter. This graph will change based on the filter. So with this chart. And you'll notice the average priority score changes up and down depending on where I zoom to on a map. So I'm showing 1 point in here and it's saying it's a 50. If I zoom back out, it automatically calculates everything. And this is very dynamic for what we're doing. And so if you have any questions on that, I'll be happy to answer some at the end of this. I want to move on now to our software requirements. Daniel Peters, and Daniel, I will let you take it away.
Thank you. Can you unshare your screen so I can share mine?
Yes. Stop share.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. I'm sure most of you guys know me. My name is Daniel Peters, and I'm the account manager for, I'm pretty sure, majority of people in the call. So in terms of software requirements, if you guys are active on your maintenance, you guys technically can do everything that Marvin has shown today. The only maybe additional expense that might have to happen if you guys have say, ArcGIS Online users, people who go out in the field to collect data and such, that is the only cost that would that could possibly happen, is people going out to the field with their smartphones and tablets and using ArcGIS Online with the mobile applications such as Survey123. Operations Dashboards is a part of ArcGIS Online, so if you are up to date on your maintenance, you actually have those capabilities already. So even though that's technically the software requirements, how about the skills to do this? I have come up with a document that if individuals would like to email me, I can send it to them, a document of some free and paid learning resources. So these are some free, this is actually some free resources to learn how to build operations dashboards, how to actually build it out. Another free resources to discuss how to do the field mobility, how Marvin created the actual form and such like that. And then the last one is a paid course called the Field Data Collection and Management class, in which it's a 2-day class in which you get like a textbook, and it's a live class to kind of learn some of these skills. Right here is my email. I know most of you guys already have it, Daniel_Peters@esri.com. If you wish for me to send this document to you, just shoot me an email anytime. And if you have any questions afterwards, myself and Carrie, my solution engineer, would be more than willing to help you guys get at least moving in the right direction. Or I'm sure Marvin would be willing to help send out a helping hand. So that's all I have. So feel free to email me. But the majority of you all are already paying for the capabilities to do what Marvin has shown you guys today. Marvin, I'm unsharing my screen. Back to you.
Okay, so I'm going to pull mine back up here. So I guess just to wrap everything up here, the number one thing that I've always offered is I'm always open to answering questions, answering anything that's troubling other municipalities trying to do GIS. I just had a conversation this morning, in fact. I'm always happy to share examples. I'm happy to share what's working for us and what we're able to do and able to accomplish. And I'm always happy to help lend a helping hand for you all to do the same. I think, Daniel, I sent you a copy of the same table, and I'm just going to back out of PowerPoint again. I sent Daniel a copy of this exact form, and while I know there are some things that you're probably going to have to change, like, of course, nobody else's Oak Hill blight and dilapidated survey, that things like that you'll have to change. But if you want to just see how this survey operates on your own system, feel free to reach out to Daniel. You can also reach out to me. I'll put my email up here in a second. And the number one thing I definitely want to stress here is the part of dilapidation that we haven't really gotten into here is the cost of structures. And in case anybody wasn't paying attention, at the bottom of this table, there's a cost to repair / demo structure. And then there's the structure status, which you all saw in the dashboard. And the reason I'm pointing these out is because they're shown as hidden in the survey. They're hidden in the survey, but they exist in our data. So what that allows us to do is, after somebody goes out and surveys a property, that allows us to have a tracking mechanism on that data after it's submitted. The thing about Survey123 is it's only meant to really be one directional. So it's only meant to be, okay, I'm sending something to you. I am sending data to you. Once I receive it, I can't send it back to Survey. It's not really meant to do that. Survey is meant for pretty much one-way communication. So to address that, they allow you to do things called hidden fields, and you can make them as dynamic as you want. You can go crazy with them, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that. But the cost to repair and demo structures is something that we're just now getting into keeping track of. We have records, we have receipts, we have invoices from years back, but the one thing that we don't have in our data is, okay, a structure that cost $5,000 scored us a 90, a structure that cost us $13,000 it was only a 75. We don't have that data yet to really illustrate any patterns, but we're working on getting that with these next round with the 11 structures I was talking about. Once they're demolished, any structure that was demolished by the city will be able to now tabulate the costs incurred based on however many structures we do end up demolishing as a city instead of the owner demolishing them. And with that, I'm going to switch to some Q&A, but first I want to bring over to the screen here. If you have any questions, feel free to send an email to this address, gis@oakhillwv.gov. I am always active on my email, so if you send something, I should be able to answer it within a day or two, and I'm happy to help you out any way you need. And so I'm trying to get my Q&A window.
So if anybody has any questions, we have the Q&A little button at the bottom of the Zoom application, or you can just email Marvin and I.
Now I'm seeing there was one answered by Daniel, so that one's.
Yeah, I got it.
I don't have any open questions at the moment. So if you do have any, feel free to type them into the Q&A. I'll give a few minutes for anybody that would wish to answer or have their questions answered. And other than that, if there are other things that you would like to see me talk about from the City of Oak Hill's GIS, one thing that I would definitely love to continue doing is webinars based on things that we're doing here in Oak Hill with GIS, the success stories of what we're doing. We have another that we did I think about 2 months ago. And the one thing that I think was successful about it was our council meeting story maps, and the reception we got from that from several different people, that was really well received. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I see Sam from Marlinton is sending some questions. You're welcome, Sam. I really appreciate coming in here. So when can I get started? How do I continue? I guess that's a question between Daniel and I. So if you have the software already, if you have everything up and going, it's easy as just going to survey123.arcgis.com. Daniel can send you the URL if you need.
Sam, I'll email you after this, and
okay.
We can figure it out from there. I'll send you an email.
Okay, and so Sam, if you have any questions, feel free to email them to me. I'm happy to help you out on that, because I don't know. Like I said, I don't know anybody's license level or anything, so Daniel's probably the guy to go to on that one. But the thing I can definitely help you all with is getting you squared away with either implementing this survey or more or less just anything else that we're doing that you want to kind of replicate. Or like I said, most of local government is plagiarism anyway, so I'm happy to share what I've gotten going on. Were there any other questions from anybody?
Nope.
Okay, guys, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. I really appreciate the attention being given to Oak Hill GIS, and I really appreciate the interest in our Dilapidated Structures program. If you do have any more questions, like I said, feel free to email me at the address shown on the screen. If you have any other ideas or suggestions for things Oak Hill could show in another webinar, feel free to drop me a line.
If anybody wants to implement kind of Marvin's workflow at their own organization, shoot Daniel an email, and we can maybe discuss best practices and a strategic plan to kind of get you all moving in the right direction. We're here to help at Esri. So I really appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.